to episode 11 of That Dynasty podcast. I am your host, Matthew, and alongside Isiah, we want to welcome you to a shorter episode of That Dynasty podcast this week. I've actually been a little bit under the weather the last couple of days, and I found out today that I have COVID again. So it's my second time going at that, and I'll tell you, it's still not fun. Isiah, have you ever had the pleasure of catching COVID yet?
Unfortunately, I have, and I'd like to let all our viewers know that I'm making sure I'm standing 6 feet away from my iPad right now, so we have no sort of interaction with that. But no, COVID sucks, dude. It sucks.
Yeah, not ideal. I think it was worse the last time around, but it is what it is, just guess it's part of our culture and the way that we live now. So,
It is.
as always, guys, we are super excited to talk about this past week. Of course, look ahead at next week, which is week 11 coming up. Before we get into everything, though, please make sure, and I feel like a broken record, but I'm going to say it every time. Please follow us on Twitter and TikTok at That Dynasty Pod just to stay up to date with custom content and the latest information, and just to stay in contact with us daily. Full videos of our podcast is up on our YouTube channel, and we also have our podcast available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Link for all of those are in the description, the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description of the video. And if you guys want to see something different in how we run the podcast, or if there's different topics or questions you have for us about being in a dynasty league, maybe you're just in general about playing fantasy football, let us know in the comments on YouTube, or tweet at us and we will respond. So let's go ahead and get started. Isiah, what are we going to be looking at today?
I mean, we got a bunch of league updates. We got a trade to break down. We got Matthew's COVID outbreak to break down. We're going to go over last week's matchup results and make predictions for this coming week. We got our MVP segments. Then we'll do our power rankings. And you want to get started with our league updates there, Matt?
Yeah, so let's take a look at the league update since we last filmed. It seems that almost everyone in the league has changed their team name this week. So let's take a look at what that looked like. For name changes, Dan went from Isiah's tight end graveyard to Dan's bent and dent QBs. So I'm sure you appreciate, Isiah, that he's changed the name now, not to be
Thank
so.
you very much, Dan.
Yep.
I'm waiting for Angie to do the same, but
Yeah, we'll see how long that takes. Darius went from Skull Squad to Darius plus Slay equals likely, which is a play off of his name, and also Darius Slay and his new tight end, Isiah Likely. So very clever. And he said that he'd been sitting on that team name for a few weeks, but he was waiting for himself to finally get a win, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. King Cobb went from Saquon D's Nuts to Rated IR. Trevor went from Scold School to Tibotimo's L Train. Yeah, he's definitely hopping on that train. Chugga chugga choo choo. And I think that's it for team name updates. There was a bunch of small waiver moves this week, but we're not going to go over any of them in particular. At this point in the season, it's been picked dry. So we got 4 trades to discuss today. Isiah, let's go ahead and take a look at them in reverse order from our most recent to I don't know how to explain that, but we'll just start with the most recent one.
So you would have explained it better, but the code, it kind of messes with your brain, so it's all good, homie. I totally get it.
That's what it is.
So I'll help you out, and I'll start off with a trade that I made this week, and that was I traded DeAndre Hopkins to King Cobb, or what's his name now, IR or something.
Rated IR, yep.
Rated IR for a 2023 second and Jerry Jeudy. To be honest, not sure why I got so much flack in here for this one. Obviously, D Hop's a WR1 this year so far. There's two or three games he's played. Hollywood Brown's coming back. He's also 30. Jerry Jeudy's value is probably the lowest it'll be. He's still only 24. Broncos offense has obviously been absolutely awful. Nothing cooking in that kitchen. But I think he's going to turn around eventually. I don't know. The way I looked at it is I got a bona fide wide receiver two, maybe flex like the next, I don't know, 5, 6 years, for 1.5 years, maybe a pretty good production and a D hop. And then I got a second thrown into it. And then the websites I use actually had me doing pretty well trade value wise. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, man, I don't like this trade for you. Like, I'll talk about why, but I don't like it for you. And it's not because I don't like the value. I do think that it is fair, and I think it makes sense why you gave up D Hop with your team build and why, rated IR would have gone for him. But I just feel like you could have gotten more for Hopkins. Ever since he's been back, he's been putting up 19 to 25 points at a minimum, right? That's his floor. And I'm almost positive someone would have given up a first for you to trade them, a stud wide receiver to help them with a playoff push. And the reason I think that is because King Cobb's second rounder is going to end up being basically an early third round pick, just based on how late it's going to fall. So it's just not a super valuable pick. And, the jury's still out on Judy. So we don't really know. It just seems like a risky. I know sometimes we can in Dynasty get into oh my gosh, this guy's really old, so I need to trade him for younger, assets. And the cool thing about, I guess, draft picks is that, you do have hope because you never know what's going to fall in that draft. But at the same time, um, we don't have to sell for pennies on the dime when it comes to our stud players. And I think Hopkins has shown he still has juice in him. We've never seen him and Hollywood Brown play together. And, we've seen the success that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have had when they, the defense can't cover both of the guys at the same time. And it's just leaving them all wide open at all times. And that could be a situation that ends up happening over there with DeAndre Hopkins still for the rest of the season. So, I think you could have definitely, I don't hate that you traded him away. I think it makes sense, but I think you could have gotten more from him. So only reason I dislike it. So let me ask you this, because I think you could have gotten more. If I had offered you my 2024 first round pick and DJ Chark for Hopkins, would you have taken that?
Or Junior second. First would be nice, probably, but I never saw that offer in my mailbox. And Hopkins had been up for quite a bit. I actually took him off the trade block and then put him on that day, like a second later, to remind people. But yeah, no, I think it's something that it's my first dynasty, and I think with this route, I probably sold some guys a little too early. With Eckler, Cook, um, Hopkins now, whatever, maybe. But it's also necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of a method. We'll see. See if it works out. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Maybe I'll blow up my face. But either way, I think it's fun. I like kind of building for the future. And I don't know. I'm also in the weird ballpark where I'm still super high on Judy.
I
So
think that's a good point. I'm not very high on Judy, so maybe for me, I devalue this trade anyways. So like I said, I feel like I feel like it's fair. Um, but I felt like you could have ripped someone off. You know what I mean? Like you could have totally
yeah,
stolen it from him. So that's
that's fair.
the reason I don't love it, because I do think you still did fine. You know what I mean? But I think you could have really slammed it, um, you know, with someone else. But that being said, I mean, let's move down to the number two trade that went down, which was
Yeah,
that was between Dan's Bent and Dent QBs and Darius plus Slay equal likely. And this was Ezekiel Elliott for a 2024 first. Now, I know that Darius was hurting at running back pretty bad, and I get why he wanted to make this move. I got to say, though, paying a 2024 first round, especially since Darius' team may fall apart after the season, is a huge overpay for Zeke at this point, especially since he just missed the last two games due to an injury, and we got to see Pollard control this backfield while he was out. I feel like that was definitely a massive overpay for Zeke. So I think this is a big win for Dan. What do you think?
yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, Zeke for first seemed pretty wild for me, especially 2024. Um, Obviously, a win for Dan value wise. I mean, I know I traded. I mean, dude, so he traded me Najee Harris, who's been a complete bum for Zeke in a first, and now he's trading Zeke again for another first. So I mean, the dude's been killing it left and right with those trades with Zeke. But like we talk about all the value wise, but if like championship game or in the playoffs, Zeke gives him a big performance and he ends up winning because of it. I think you make that trade 10 times out of 10. But value wise, I mean, you can't say that it was a good trade for him. But we'll see what happens. But Dan did really well for himself.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. But if his team falls apart next year and that first belongs to Dan, Dan's gonna make out pretty good with that trade.
Yeah, agreed.
So the third trade that went down was also involving Dan's bent and dent QBs and Angie, aka Isaiah's tiny purse. And this was Deontay Foreman for a 23 second round pick. So I actually think this trade makes sense. It was Angie trading Deontay Foreman to Dan's bent and dent QBs, and Angie got the 23 second round pick. So I think this makes even more sense than the last trade. Angie knew that she was going to try and sell off Foreman pretty much since the moment she drafted him and realized that her picks weren't really working out this year. Dan is making bank right now. He just traded away Zeke and got a first back. And then at the same time, he traded away a second round pick and got pretty much in my opinion, is going to be the same production that he's going to get for the rest of the season out of Foreman. And he only had to give up a second. So he basically upgraded his second round pick to a 2024 first round pick, while without sacrificing any production potentially in his roster. So good overall move for Dan. I'm not really sure if it's going to be enough to take his team over the edge, but I don't think he lost out because of that trade.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan for Dan, only because I'm not sure that his roster is good enough to compete for this year. Um, Foreman's 26, so it's not like he's really young. I feel like this trade would have made more sense to someone like you or King Cobb or Saden Power or Darius's roster. I'm just not sure, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just a second, and he just got a first, so I don't hate it. It's fine. It's a fine trade. We'll see what Dan does making the playoffs and whatnot.
Yeah, because right now he's ranked fifth overall, so he's set to make the playoffs. He's 5-5 right now. So
Yeah.
people 5-5. So this could be wow. I just realized there's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that are 5-5 right now. Basically, everyone ranked 4 to 7 is 5-5.
That must be nice.
So it's really, really tight race right there to be competing for that playoff matchup. All right. And the final trade hardly is worth talking about. Trevor's T-Potamo's L Train and Andy's Kirk Wears All the Chains. It was just a simple trade. Colt McCoy for 200 fab. Trevor got a QB for a spot start, and that's all there's really is to say about this trade.
Yep, we got nothing to add. Just must be nice to spend or send Fab in this league and not get absolutely roasted. So I'll leave it off on that.
All right. Want to go over last week's predictions?
Yeah, let's take a look at what we got here, guys.
Okay. The first matchup of the week, which was Team Goni 1 versus Chris Rock's Jaw. I had picked Team Goni 1 to take the victory, and Isiah had picked himself to take the victory.
Idiot.
He definitely, Team Goni 1 definitely won. He put up 120 points, and Isiah put up 74.34 points. That was a 50-point differential, and it was a blowout. Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
They got smoked, dude. I also left McCall Hardman. I didn't realize he was hurt. I was busy all weekend. I just didn't look at my lineup that morning. I messed up. There's a bunch of underperformers. Kyle Pitts did nothing again. Evan Ingram did nothing. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did absolutely nothing. I mean, it's annoying, bro, with those Chiefs running backs. Like the week before I started Pacheco and lost because of it, and then this week I didn't start I started Clyde Hilaire, and then the other two running backs gave better production. It's just Najee Harris has done nothing. It's just whatever. I'm moving on to next year at this point. I feel like.
I can't believe you sat Dak Prescott.
So that was an accident. That he was supposed to be starting, but I don't know. That day I was like, "Why is Jared Goff starting?" And I guess I just wasn't paying attention last week. I was running around working like 12s. So
Well, I gotta say that I think even if you had started Dak and you had swapped out Hardman and you had started one of the right chief running backs, you still would have lost.
yeah,
So
I could have started Brian Robinson. I still would have lost. So.
yeah, so not exactly the best case scenario. Moving on to next week, the next matchup we were looking at was Darius versus Team Seed and Power.
Darius dropped $157, dude. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb had a hell of a performance. It's wild. CeeDee Lamb is kind of so low in this league. I was looking at his stats compared to like AJ Brown, and he has like one less touchdown, like I don't know, it was like 40, 50 less yards. And everyone's been talking about how great of a value Brown's been this year, but CeeDee Lamb is just he's been consistent as well. I mean, what is he now? He's eighth receiver ranked. It was really, really good.
No, I mean, this is another 50-point victory. So when you want to talk about like blowouts, like I picked Team Seed and Power to win, you picked Darius. So we're back to being even. I was wrong about this one, 157 to 107. He still, Seed and Power scored 30 more points than you did and still got beat by 50 points. Like absolutely
Yeah.
brutal. Dalvin Cook had a good game for him. Jay Taylor had a good game for him. You know, Jalen Waddle was okay, but everyone else kind of sat down. George Kittle had a bad game. Debo, not really great. AJ Brown didn't really do much. So,
Yeah.
go up against Darius, who has CeeDee Lamb, Travis Kelce, Diggs, Slayton. Josh Allen had a mediocre game, and he even started your sleeper from a couple of weeks ago, Harrison Bryant, who scored a touchdown. So, good week for Darius there.
Yeah. And then third matchup, dude. Tell us how you were feeling about this one.
Well, I was feeling better going into the week, and then Derrick Henry put up 8 points, so that didn't make no sense. And then Amari Cooper, he was away, and anytime he's away, he goes for 32 yards. It's actually insane if you looked at his home versus road splits for the whole year. He's a top 5 wide receiver every single week that he plays on the road. Or sorry, every time he's home, and when he's on the road, he hasn't ever had more than 50 yards in a game. It's insane. I honestly was going to bench him this week if I had another wide receiver because he's away against Buffalo. But yeah, it's just bad. Didn't have a lot of people show up, and it was a nail biter, and it came right down to the final game, and or Sunday night game, and I was waiting for Everett and Eckler to basically outscore the 116 that Sully put up by the 1 o'clock games. He was done, and I ended up only beating him by 1 point. So it was a disaster of a week.
Yeah, I think anytime you have to start Snoop Connor as one of your running backs is not ideal. That's really what cost him. I mean, I don't know who else he was started, but gotta think you can start a better running back than that. But
yeah, he had some underperformers for sure. I should have started Aaron Jones over Amari Cooper, and I was really on the fence about that, and I should have done it, and it wouldn't have been close if I had done that. So, all right, next matchup.
got Trevor and Topo Domo, and now that you gave away Trevor's new name, I think we know who won this one. Trevor won 131 to 116. Won by a good 15 points. Cole Kmet season, dude. 4 receptions, 74 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that's kind of the one that brought him to victory. I'm looking at their 2 lineups right now, and it's pretty average scores from everybody. Obviously, Justin Jefferson was fantastic and kept Topo Domo in the game, but nothing crazy going on. Just a really wild performance commit.
I feel like Topadoma should have won that game just because of that catch from Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, that should have been worth 100. That was what a game, man. What a game.
Yeah, Jacobs, wide receiver. Running back one again. Rondell Moore's been phenomenal lately. Yep, good matchup.
Our fifth matchup, actually another close one. We had Andy Bobani and King Cobb's rated IR, and King Cobb only won by 10. And yeah, pretty much not any spoilers, but he started Justin Fields. So there you go.
Dude, it was a savage week for him. Because he only won because of Justin Fields, but realistically, he lost Cooper Kupp and Zach Ertz probably for the season
Yeah,
in the same game.
and he started Jerry Judy.
Yeah, he's hurting right now. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be a
Well,
good look.
he's got D Hop now, so we'll see if that changes at all. And then last matchup we had Angie's Isaiah's Tiny Purse against Dan's Benton Den QBs, and Dan won this one by what a good 35 points. Yeah, not a whole lot from Angie's roster. Got a great performance from Christian Kirk. Yeah, Geno Smith another 18 points. So
Yeah, we both predicted correctly on this one. I forgot to say that on the last one. We both predicted that Ray Power was going to win, and he did. And we both predicted Dan was going to win in this matchup, and he did. Christian Kirk did look phenomenal. He also lost Dallas Goedert in this game, potentially for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks or longer. That sucks. And when I look at who his other tight ends are now, it looks like he'll be starting Jawan Johnson, who's been a touchdown magnet lately. So yes, it wouldn't hurt him too badly, but see what ends up happening. Yeah, so after this week, we both went 4-2 on those picks, and that brings our total for the season. I'm still 4 games behind. 33-27 is my record. You're 37-23. So still got a 4-game lead on me. Let's talk about some of the players that actually made those matchups possible, or could have potentially shifted those odds in one way or another. Who do you got for the impact players here, the MVPs?
yeah, so I'll start with my bench MVP. I had see if I can pronounce the name right. I think it's Cadarrell Lodge.
Wait, who?
Cadarrell Lodge, Cadarrell.
Who?
Cadarrell Lodge.
Never heard of this man.
Yeah, I hadn't either. That's why I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. He's a wide receiver for the Falcons, I guess, and not someone I've ever talked about, and I don't think I'll ever talk about again. No offense, Mr. Lodge, if you're listening. But yeah, he had a touchdown this week. He had 2 catches for 37 yards, gave him a total of about 11.5 points fantasy wise. He was left on the bench on Love Boat Incidents roster. In a matchup they lost by 1 point. And if he would have started him, Mr. Lodge, over Wandale Robinson, as all of us would have suggested, he would have secured the W and beat Matthew this week. But he did not start Mr. Lodge. So
That's
move on from
for
that
him.
one. Yeah. And then my MVP, I got Mr. Justin Fields, dude. He's up to QB4 in the year. It's been a hell of a run. The immaculate man himself, running around like a madman. Just another insane week, bro. He dropped another 38 points, threw for 167 yards, a passing touchdown, and then ran for 147 and 2 rushing touchdowns. King Cobb, we talked about, won the matchup by about 9 points, and I'd say mostly thanks to Fields' epic performance.
Yeah, what a comeback story for Fields at the beginning of this year. He was absolutely garbage, and the last 6 weeks he's been phenomenal.
Probably the best quarterback in that draft class right now, to be honest.
Looking like it, no doubt. At least for fantasy purposes. My bench MVP is DeAndre Carter, the wide receiver for Los Angeles Chargers. When Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were injured and were sitting out, we all wanted to assume that Josh Palmer would be the beneficiary of that. But in the absence and all these targets waiting to be snapped up, Carter stepped in, would have saved the day for Andy in a matchup that was decided by less than 10 points. The 16 points that Carter put up on the bench would have been enough for the W. but Andy sat him on the bench. Carter didn't even have the greatest game, to be honest. 4 for 4, 64 yards and a touchdown. Sometimes it's the simple games that cost us the most. My actual MVP of this week was Devontae Adams, wide receiver, Las Vegas, owned by myself. My victory of the Love Boat incident was by less than 2 points. I thought I was about to be writing up a segment on how Aaron Jones was my bench MVP, but Adam came in clutch for me with 27.5 points, 9 receptions, 126 yards, and a touchdown. Would not have won without his massive performance. If he had just caught one less pass, this would be a whole different ball game, whole different story. So he is my MVP of the week.
About the only bright spot in that Raiders roster this year.
They look so bad.
Oh, him and Jacobs, yeah. Yeah.
All right, dude. Let's get into some predictions for this upcoming week.
Sweet. First, starting off the bat, we'll start off with Darius and King Cobb. Battle of the heavyweights over here. Darius coming in at 7-3, off a victory, and then King Cobb coming in at 9-1. Usually, I'd go with King Cobb because of his record and how great he's been this year. But I think the injuries to Cooper Kupp and Zach Ertz are really tough. I know he's got D-Hop now, but I think Darius wins this one. He's projected to win by about 18 or so.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if he hadn't been absolutely slaughtered by injuries, this would be a hands down King Cobb. But to be honest, I think that I'm going to be rooting for King Cobb in this one. And the reason why is because Darius has been just attempting to, how should I say, get by week to week. I don't know for sure that Mark Andrews is going to be back. He does have some really great pieces, but I think that Fields and Barkley, Chubb, Sutton's set to have a good week this week. James Conner's finally starting to be back, and now DeAndre Hopkins. I do think that there's going to be enough there for King Cobb to step up and take this victory, and we'll see what happens, but that's my bold prediction of the week.
Nice. All right. Second one, we got Seeding Power, and then versus Andy Bobani. We got 5-5 Seeding Power coming in 4-6. Kirk wears all the chains now. Looking at the two rosters this week, I think Seeding Power wins this one in a really close matchup. I think it's a couple good performances from JT, Dalvin Cook, and then should be getting a bounce back game from AJ Brown. But I can definitely see this going either way. It'll be interesting to see how the weapons for that Niners offense looks and how it bodes for Seeding.
Yeah, I think that Lamar is set to have a big game. JT's finally back, and Dalvin Cook. I'm leaning Seeding Power in this one as well. I think that's going to be enough. The only way that I could see this changing is if the targets went to Smith instead of Brown, because Smith's on the other side of the game here. McCaffrey could have another baller game. Arizona on Monday, but because Andy is starting Kyler and McCaffrey, it's going to be right down to the wire more than likely, all the way to the end of that Monday night game.
Who'd you pick? I'm sorry.
Seeding Power.
Seeding Power. Third match of the week, we got Chris Rock's draw against Trevor and his name change. I actually think Trevor wins this one. I have all but given up on my team for the most part this year. Got rid of D-Hop, obviously. Got a couple guys on bye. And I think I'll have a tough time racking up the points needed to secure the victory. Just got me beat at running back this week with Ramondre, Jacobs, and Singletary. So I think Trevor pulls it off.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have anything else to say about that.
Okay. Copy. Matthew's not a good friend like I am, so we'll move on to the next matchup. We got Topo Domo versus Team Joni 1. I actually got Topo Domo winning this one, even though he's projected to lose by about 10 points. I really like what he has going on at receiver. Jefferson, hopefully Jude plays this week, not looking too hot, but we'll see. And then he's got DJ Moore as well. I also am being subjective and hoping that Team Joni 1 loses so I could that pick continues to plummet. But I think it'll be a close matchup.
Yeah, I'm also I've got team Topodomo taking this one. I think that Aaron Rodgers is set to have a nice game against Tennessee. Miles Sanders, I think, is going to be a good matchup with Indy's run defense. Justin Jefferson, you just can't vote against Justin Jefferson. And yeah, I think he's going to take this one.
Next, we got Isaiah's tiny purse versus Love Boat Incident. Believe it or not, I think Angie gets win numero dos. I've been on her before, and I haven't been so lucky, but I think it changes this week. Projected outscore Love Boat Incident by about 7-8 points. I think she pulls it off. Really comes down to how those Green Bay receivers look for her. As we're recording, I think it's on right now, but I'm not looking. I do not want to know how my projection is looking so far. Matthew and I, by the way, made sure that we made these projections yesterday and shared them with each other, so there'd be no cheating going on. But yeah, I think anytime you have to start Jerome Ford as one of your running backs, it's tough to vote for you, Love Boat. So give me Angie.
Yeah, the only way I could see Angie not winning this game, because I also have her winning, would be if Patrick Mahomes goes absolutely nuclear and goes for almost 50 points. I could see that being the deciding factor, especially if he's starting
Which with
Tony, and they look like they had a pretty good connection last week.
yeah, I mean with his talent too, that's always not too much out of the ballpark. And then last we got Buster Jacoby going up against Mr. Dan Sullivan himself. Unlike Matthew, I'm going to pick my co-host and have him win this week, and I think his hot streak continues. I actually do think it's gonna be really close, though. Normally, would have had you win pretty easily, but you had Godwin and Tyreek both on buys. But you still have a lot of talent in that lineup right now with Eckler, Henry, Aaron Jones. Give me Buster Jacoby going 8-3 on the year.
Well, if it makes you feel any better about not rooting for you to win this week, I also didn't even think myself is going to win this week. I actually have Dan winning this one. Dan's 5-5, but I do think that like I am terrified about Amari Cooper on the road. His road splits are atrocious. He can't perform on the road, and injury concerns for Gerald Everett this week. I'm starting Antonio Gibson, who is just a shot in the dark. So I don't trust it. And I think that at the end of the day, I think Dan honestly has a better starting lineup this week than I do.
Yeah. And he just traded for Foreman, right? Who's Dan?
Yeah. But I mean, I'm looking at like who he's sitting on his bench. Or he's starting Joe Burrow. I'm starting Derek Carr. So we are not the same.
They're not the same.
He's got Drake London on his bench. He got Brandon Cooks on his bench.
Yeah, he got some talent.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the looks of that for myself. We'll see.
All right, Matt, do you want to give us our power rankings moving forward?
Yeah, so let's talk about power rankings. So real quick, I know we had a request to talk about, what exactly goes into the power rankings and like how it's weighted and stuff like that. So I'll talk to you guys through the percentages right now, as far as exactly how this is calculated. So the majority of the power rankings are calculated on wins on the season, which is 37%. 20% is total points. 20% is recent points, which goes last 3 weeks. Then we have 8% is the last 3 weeks of projected points. And then we have 7% of the power rankings is projected points in general. And then 1% coming in there is voting, quote unquote. So at the beginning of the year, we all or a few of us voted on who we thought was like the top teams, and we ranked all of them. So that was like 1%. I've been updating that weekly with there's a feature in Sleeper that gives you what Fantasy Pros has for their power rankings, and it just does it automatically. So I just have been updating the 1% of our power rankings with the power rankings from Fantasy Pros instead of having us do our own voting every single week. But the impact that it has is pretty minimal. But that's how it breaks down. So let's talk about how the actual results are for this week. So coming in at number 12, Isiah's Tiny Purse, no movement there. But there is some movement here at number 11 in the power rankings. All the way down at the bottom is Chris Rock's Jaw. How the mighty have fallen.
I'm last. There's 11th. What?
Yeah. Fell all the way down to 11th in this update. So, not a great look going forward here for Isiah. Coming in at number 10 now is Kirk Wears All the Chains, and that's actually a decrease of 3 spots for him. Definitely not his best moment or where he wants to be right now, but he's been on a losing streak, so see if he breaks that this week.
Yeah.
Coming in at 9, this is a huge drop all the way down 5 spots this week is Team Seed and Power. Just a massive drop down here, and outlook for Team Seed and Power not super great going forward. Although I got you winning this week, buddy. Come on, don't let me down. Number 8, no movement here. The Love Boat Incident. At number 7, this is all the way up 4 spots this week, and this is Trevor's team, aka Topotamo's L Train. Then at number 6, same as he was last week, is Topotamo. One Mo W and I'm good. Winky face.
Yeah, one more L and he's not going to be so good, huh?
That's pretty accurate. Number 5 didn't move from last week is Dan's Bent and Dent QBs. Number 4 this week, up 6 spots, Team Goni 1. Huge jump from 10 to 4.
That's nuts.
And then at number 3 is for the first time this year outside the top 2, Rated IR, aka King Cobb, dropped from the number 1 spot to number 3 overnight, which is crazy because he actually won, but he so vastly underperformed that it just absolutely crushed him. At number 2, still no movement from last week, is $96 Fab Bids. Myself, and at number 1, reclaiming his spot at the top, is Darius plus Slay equals likely. Our commish moving up 2 spots to reclaim number 1 in the power rankings. And there you have our
a lot of big movement this week, huh?
some vast swings for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, that is a wrap for this week's episode, everybody. Please be sure to like and comment on the video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, please leave us a rating, a review. It really does help. Follow us on TikTok and Twitter to stay up to date with the latest content. If you're following us on Twitter, who knows if that will be around much longer. So just, join in for the fun while we can. Interact with us and yeah, man. Patriots versus Jets this week.
Yeah. I think the Pats pulled off. We've done really well playing defense against Zach Wilson. I do not think we'll do well after this week, but I think we win this week. I think Pats win, Jets lose, and I think Elon keeps on taking L's. So,
yeah, I think that we have the Jets number, so I think we're going to take this one. But yeah, I think it'll be a close game, and it'll be interesting to see how we face against Michael Carter and James Robinson this time around.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you I'm going to a Patriots game on New Year's Day against the Dolphins. That'd be pretty sweet.
It should be a good game, dude. Let's do.
Yeah. Get to see Tua and Tyreek and Waddle, and so I'm excited.
Hopefully you see Gesicki hit the gritty or what?
Well, I mean, more than once, hopefully.
Well, actually, hopefully not.
True. All right, man. You want to sign us out?
Yeah, let's do it. For that Dynasty podcast and my COVID co-host over here, Matthew, so long, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Adios.